The wind howled as it swept through quiet streets of the small town, carrying with it an unsettling chill that made even the bravest souls keep to their homes. The town was known for its peaceful atmosphere, but not today. Today, something different lingered in the air, an ominous feeling that seemed to pulse through the very ground beneath everyone's feet. In the heart of this town lived a woman named Evelyn Clarke, a 95-year-old war veteran who had seen more in her lifetime than most could ever imagine. Her small cottage, tucked away at the edge of town, was a testament to years of service, sacrifice, and resilience. Inside, the walls were adorned with medals, photographs, and mementos from a time long past, memories of her youth, of battles fought and of friends lost. But in recent years, Evelyn had become a recluse, her interactions with the outside world limited to the occasional trip to the local market or a chat with the neighbors. It wasn't that she had lost touch with the world. It was that the world had forgotten about her, or so she thought. One afternoon, as Evelyn sat in her favorite chair by the window, her peace was abruptly shattered. A rumble of engines broke the stillness, growing louder with each passing second. She looked outside, narrowing her eyes against the sunlight. A group of bikers had pulled up the town's only diner across the street, their roaring motorcycles echoing through the small town. At first, it seemed harmless, just a few troublemakers passing through. But as the day wore on, the bikers' behavior grew more disturbing. They began causing a scene, intimidating the locals with their loud laughter and crude jokes. Evelyn had seen enough. She had witnessed brutality in the war. Nothing frightened her anymore. But she wasn't afraid of the bikers' threats or their taunting stares. What troubled her was a growing sense of unease they stirred in the town, the way they turned people's smiles into frowns, their joy into anxiety. That evening, as she sat down to her solitary dinner, there was a knock at the door. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting anyone. She opened the door slowly, her mind racing. Standing in front of her was a tall, imposing biker with a sneer on his face. "Hey, old lady," he said, his voice thick with mockery. "Got a problem with us? Maybe you should take a little walk down memory lane, huh?" His words were venomous, and his eyes sparkled with menace. Evelyn's grip tightened around the doorknob, but she didn't back down. "I've fought bigger battles than you," she replied coolly, her voice unwavering. The biker laughed, a deep, hollow sound that sent chills down her spine. "We'll see about that, old woman." He turned and walked away, but not before giving her one last look, one that promised trouble. As the biker's taunt echoed in the silence, Evelyn knew this was just beginning. But what could one old woman do against a gang of bikers? She was no stranger to violence, but this wasn't her fight to win alone. Yet, she wasn't about to back down. The night felt colder, the shadows stretching longer. And that's when she remembered something. The one thing she had never forgotten in all her years. The one thing she could still rely on, no matter what. Her phone. Evelyn reached for it, her fingers trembling slightly as she dialed a number she hadn't called in years, a number from her past, a number that held the key to what would happen next. The phone rang once, twice, and then a familiar voice answered, gruff but warm. "Clarke, is that you?" It was Captain John Matthews, her former commanding officer during the war. He was an old man now, but his voice still carried the weight of authority. Evelyn's heart gave a small leap at hearing it again. "John," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I need help. There's a group of bikers in town, and they're causing trouble." There was a pause on the other end. "Bikers, huh? What kind of trouble?" John asked, his tone laced with concern. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, her mind flashing back to the days when she was a soldier, when she had faced insurmountable odds and lived to tell the tale. The thought of asking for help felt strange to her, but there was no other choice now. "They've been bullying the townsfolk, intimidating people, and making threats," she said, her voice growing more determined. "I can handle myself, but these men, they're dangerous, and I'm not the only one they're targeting. I'm worried they'll escalate." Another pause. Then John's voice came through, steady and commanding, as though no time had passed since their days in the field. "Don't worry, Evelyn. I've got people who can take care of this. You stay safe, understand?" Evelyn didn't need to hear more. She trusted him, trusted that he would keep his word. "I'll wait for your call, John. Don't let them get away with this." With that, she hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over her. But she wasn't naive. She knew that whatever was about to happen would not be easy. The bikers weren't going to back down easily, and John's help might not come in time. As the hours dragged on, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The town seemed eerily quiet, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. But she had no idea just how far this would go. At the diner across the street, the bikers had gathered in a circle, laughing and shouting. Evelyn couldn't hear their words, but she saw the glint in their eyes. They were planning something. Something bigger than just intimidating the locals. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. A motorcycle revved to life, followed by the sound of tires screeching. Evelyn's heart raced as she peered out the window. The bikers were on the move, heading towards her street. Her street. Her thoughts raced as she grabbed the phone again, ready to call for help. But before she could dial, a knock echoed through her door once more. This time, it wasn't just one biker. It was several. Evelyn's pulse quickened as the knock on her door grew louder. The sound echoed in the small cottage, each thud making her heart race faster. She wasn't scared, not really, but the weight of the situation pressed on her. She was no longer just a soldier, but an elderly woman who had been thrust into a battle she wasn't prepared for. She set the phone down carefully, her hand steady despite the rising tension. There was no turning back now. She knew they had come for her, and there was no time to waste. She stood, moving toward the door with purpose. Her joints ached with the effort, but she kept her movements deliberate, confident. Evelyn had been trained for moments like this, moments when the enemy came knocking, when the odds were stacked against you, and when there was no one left to fight beside you. As she reached the door, she peeked through the small crack in the curtains. The bikers stood in a menacing line outside her cottage, their leather jackets reflecting the dim light from the street lamp. They had that look in their eyes that spoke of malice, of unrestrained power. There were 6 of them, each towering over her, each one with a smirk that suggested they were already relishing the chaos they were about to cause. Evelyn knew she needed to buy herself some time. With a deep breath, she opened the door just enough for her voice to carry. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice unwavering despite the fear she could feel begin to stir in her chest. The lead biker stepped forward, his boots making heavy sounds against the wooden porch. He was tall, muscular, with a face that looked like it had seen more fights than he could remember. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, it felt like the world stood still. "We just wanted to have a little chat, old lady," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You got a problem with us? We were just having some fun, and it seems like you've got a problem with that." Evelyn's mind raced as she measured her words carefully. She knew that words alone wouldn't stop these men. They needed to understand that she wasn't afraid, that she wasn't a target they could easily intimidate. She straightened her back and stared him down, her voice low but fierce. "I've seen worse than you in my time," she said. "So you better leave before I decide to show you just how bad things can get." The biker laughed, a sound that made Evelyn's skin crawl. "I like this one. You got spunk, old lady. But that won't help you when we're done with you." With that, he nodded to his crew, and they began moving closer. But before they could make another move, something unexpected happened. The sound of engines revving in the distance cut through the night, followed by the unmistakable roar of a motorcycle. Evelyn's eyes widened in recognition as a familiar sound grew louder. A voice inside her stirred. John's voice, a memory from years ago, telling her to stay calm, to hold out just a little longer. Suddenly, the bikers froze, their heads turning in unison toward the sound of approaching motorcycles. The rumble of engines grew louder, and with it, the distinct sound of tires screeching to a halt. The bikers didn't know it yet, but the cavalry was here. Evelyn's heart pounded as she stepped back from the door, watching through the window with bated breath. The biker gang was momentarily distracted, their attention diverted by the unexpected arrival. The sound of roaring engines grew louder, closer. Evelyn's eyes narrowed as she saw the riders, not just a few, but a whole line of motorcycles coming down the road. each one built for power, each one gleaming in the dim streetlight. The leader of the gang looked confused, his smirk faltering for the first time. "Who the hell are these guys?" he muttered under his breath, as the motorcycles pulled to a stop in front of the cottage. Evelyn barely breathed as she recognized the riders. They were familiar faces, old comrades from a time long past. John had come through, just as he promised. The bikers hesitated, clearly unnerved by the arrival of these new figures. One by one, they turned to face a new threat. Men and women dressed in military-grade gear, their eyes cold and unwavering. These weren't just ordinary bikers. These were veterans, people who had lived through their own battles and who knew how to handle themselves in the heat of conflict. John Matthews was among them, his once gray hair now dusted with silver, but his presence as commanding as ever. He dismounted his motorcycle, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. He turned toward the leader of the biker gang, his gaze sharp, calculating. "You've been causing trouble around here," John said, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable authority. "That ends now." The leader of the gang bristled. "You think you can just roll in here and push us around? You're outnumbered, old man." John chuckled darkly. "You miscalculated." He motioned behind him, and as if on cue, several more motorcycles pulled up, this time with even more veterans. They were outnumbered, but they weren't outmatched. Evelyn watched the standoff unfold in front of her, her mind racing. She had expected a fight, but this was something else entirely. The tension was palpable, and she could feel the weight of the moment pressing in on her chest. She wasn't sure how this would end, but one thing was certain. The bikers would never forget this night. As the standoff continued, the leader of the gang finally seemed to realize the weight of the situation. His bravado faltered, and for the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. He looked back at his crew, who were beginning to second-guess their actions. "You've made a mistake," John continued, his voice low and dangerous, "and it's time to pay the price." The bikers stood frozen for a moment longer, the sound of the engines echoing in the stillness of the night. Then, one by one, the tension broke. The leader of the gang gave a sharp nod, signaling to retreat. Without another word, the bikers climbed back onto their motorcycles and sped off into the distance. As the last of the bikers disappeared into the night, Evelyn stood at the window, her breath shallow, her body trembling. The storm had passed, but she knew it wasn't over. The calm after the chaos always made her feel uneasy. John and his team dismounted, walking toward her cottage. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You're safe now, Evelyn. We got your back." Evelyn felt a rush of gratitude wash over her, but there was something more, a sense of triumph, of defiance, of never backing down, no matter the odds. She had faced danger head-on, and now she had a story to tell. A story of a woman who refused to be intimidated by anyone, no matter their size, no matter their power. As the veteran stood outside her door, Evelyn's gaze lingered on the night sky. It was clear, calm now, nothing like the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. The world had tested her, but she had stood firm. And in the end, the bikers were the ones who had to retreat, not her. "This isn't over, is it?" Evelyn asked, her voice steady. John looked at her and shook his head. "No, but we'll be ready just in case." As she closed the door behind them, Evelyn couldn't help but smile. She had faced her fears, and the world would never forget what happened here. But deep down, she knew that the true battle wasn't over. It had just begun.